Hello everyone and welcome to today's live stream. I'm your host Mod Ayiza and I'm joined by the wonderful Mod Ed, who is our senior narrative designer. How are you doing today, Ed?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, thank you.
Glad to hear it, glad to hear it. What have you been up to? Anything interesting?
Just Desert Treasure really. It doesn't stop once it launches. All the various post-launch feedback and all that sort of thing.
It's been a wild week, that's for sure, and I can definitely attest for how much you've been working on it after I had to put together the news post for this week's game update. There was a lot in there. A lot of small changes, big tweaks, but you're doing a great job, and I feel like the player base are very appreciative of it because there's been such great feedback, so all good. I've been obsessed with the Duke. It is like my new favorite piece of content. That guy is just, there's something about the Duke that I just love. Its simplicity in nature, the beauty of the environment and the boss. Very good update.
Is it also the pet?
Well, I'm trying to go for the pet, yeah. I thought, you know what? I'm going to pretend that I'm going for Virtus, but really I just want that cute blob to be following me around. Oh dear. Anyway, today we're going to be talking all about lore, which is surprising because I definitely should not be here because I know absolutely nothing about lore. So I'm actually really keen to learn and understand a bit more. So I'm grateful for the fact that we have Ed to be able to go over it all, who's going to be sharing some insight into the writing process, as well as answering some of your questions around about Desert Treasure 2's lore. Now, obviously, I hope most of you had a chance to play the quest by now, but if you've not, just be aware that this stream is going to be very spoiler heavy. So if you don't want any spoilers, you might want to give this one a miss until you've actually done the quest, because we are going to be pretty much talking relatively openly about it all. And if you missed our stream on Monday, if you're more interested around questions and answers regarding the quest itself, or the bosses and the content, then go and check the VOD that's on Twitch or actually on our YouTube channel, and you can see all of that there with the various mods that joined on the stream at the time, Ed being one of them. Right, I'm sure you're as excited as I am to get down to business, but let's first go over some announcements. So first of all, ! Game update. If you haven't seen it already, we've made some feedback updates for Desert Treasure 2, such as being able to purchase extra Rings of Shadow, stamina boosts have been added to the Stranglewood and Lasar, as well as revealing the drop rates for the 4 bosses. So ! Game update for that, and it will give you a link to everything that you need to know. In addition, if you are interested about lore pre-Desert Treasure 2, if you type !video, you'll get a link to a nice video that Poison Potion put together, which is a lore recap of everything leading up to Desert Treasure 2, where you can find out more about Zaros and the Mahjarrat within there. And then last announcement for now is Forestry. We've just today released an updated version of the blog, which looks at a lot of the changes and feedback that we've taken into account for part 2 of Forestry, which is due later on this year. But there is a poll that will be going live next week. I believe it's on Monday. So go and read the blog, familiarize yourself with everything that's within there, ready for when you have to vote on what it is that you want to be coming into the game on Monday. That's all I have for announcements. Nice, short and sweet. We did that in 4 minutes, which is absolute record timing. This is new territory for me. So let's get straight into the questions. And Ed, I hope you've got some water prepared, because boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to get through. So first of all, and chat, behave yourselves. I had to Google how to pronounce this name, and I already know what you're going to do. This word, I mean. But anyway, I'm going to send it because this is the question that we got asked. And the first question is, how did the Elder Horn end up being chosen as the titular desert treasure? Did you think of any others before settling on the horn?
Sorry, you've completely you've set me off now with that.
That's not like me.
Yes, the horn. Let's talk about the horn rather than anything else. So when writing these quests, I find it really varies how quickly things come together. I think I've talked before on these Q&As about how there's some quests like Dragon Slayer 2 where the vast majority was actually written in about 2 days, and it stayed pretty similar from what was in that original design document all the way through to launch. Then there's others that it's fair to say there's a bit more iteration, and I think Desert Treasure 2 was definitely one of them. We knew we wanted to do Desert Treasure 2, we knew we wanted to take the Mahjarrat storyline, continue it, and we knew we wanted to try and basically try and try and balance it a little bit. We still wanted to be respectful of what had come before. Like, you know, it's super important that these storylines continue to feel old school. They feel like the quests that the original creators intended and that sort of thing. But we also knew that we wanted to take it in a very different and a very, very bold direction. And it took a while to work out like what the I guess the hook of it all was. Like, we knew very early on that Sliske was going to be the big bad revealed at the end, and we knew very early on like his whole thing would be that he's actually been sort of like lurking around for quite a few quests, sort of in the background behind the scenes, like pretending to be other people. Like, that was something that was like very clear early on, so it very much became, okay, we know he's going to play a big part, but what does he actually want? And the way it sort of came about is we had a look at what RuneScape did with Temple at Centerston and with the Frostenhorn, the other horn, and like the artifacts Azanadra was collecting, and that was one of the things we knew we didn't want to do. We do not want to do this because that's one of the things that we want to go in our own direction. Especially a heavy part of that because a lot of that stuff there is sort of like directly leading to like the return of the gods and like interacting with Zaros directly. So we wanted to, you know, completely change up all of that. And it was when sort of thinking about the Frostenhorn that recalled when the Elder Artifacts sort of started becoming a big thing over in RuneScape, and it was revealed that one of them was a horn. And I distinctly remember at the time a lot of people saying, "Oh well, if there's a horn, it's obviously the Frostenhorn. There's not going to be two powerful artifacts, both a horn, is there?" And I remember people getting sort of like a lot of people immediately assuming it had to be the Frostenhorn and the Elder Horn. They had to be one and the same thing. And sort of thinking back to that, sort of struck me with this realization: like, we can work with that, we can play with that. Like, it is weird that there's two artifacts called a horn, so let's embrace that and let's have that actually be sort of like the plot of this quest, that you think it's one of them and then it turns out to be the other. And it's like, it's kind of like almost meta storytelling to a certain extent, because like people would to a certain extent expect the Frostenhorn as well. People know we're doing our sequel to Desert Treasure. RuneScape sequel to Desert Treasure was Temple at Centerston, and they're probably going to expect the Frostenhorn to appear. So we were quite cheeky about it, like sort of like intentionally, sort of like early in the quest, sort of bigging up like it's a Frostenhorn, and then reveal this twist at the end that it's actually the Elder Horn instead. And it made perfect sense for Sliske's character as well. He's very much a character who's all about manipulating people, and it really sets him aside from like a lot of people when it comes to what big artifact would a lot of these villains want. They'd want the Stone of Jas, which is obviously what played a big part in Walgothic Sleeps and Ritual of Mahjarrat over in RuneScape. That was all like the big MacGuffin, I suppose, of that storyline, was the Stone of Jas, like just this sheer raw power. And there's a fly.
I saw that like flying around in the background.
I've lost where I was now. What was I saying? Yeah, was it Stone of Jas? Like, just this like sheer raw power. It's exactly the kind of thing that Lucian would be interested in. But Sliske is a bit more. He's not as interested in that sort of thing. He's far more about manipulating people. And the Elder Horn being the artifact that gives him the power to like control anyone, it just fits so perfectly with his character. That's sort of how it all came together. Just this realization that it's the perfect kind of thing for Sliske, and it fits so well with like the whole bait and switch we want to do with it not being the Frostenhorn and taking a different direction. And that, to us, I think it was really at that point where the quest went from being some very rough, vague ideas to really starting to come together of not just this quest, but then also sort of starting to become clear of exactly what we wanted to do with the entire Mahjarrat storyline. Once we came to that realization that the Elder Horn was what was going to be in that vault, all the pieces just started to fall into place at that point.
Nice, okay, it makes sense. I mean, even me as not being super entwined with the lore, and I know of the Frostenhorn, at least I've heard of that, and I can definitely attest for the fact that I felt manipulated by Sliske during that quest, especially at the end. Like, wow, what a reveal that was. Okay, so I mean, following on from there then, we actually have quite a few questions to begin with just about the horn, so apologies if you've kind of covered parts of it, but if so, just ask me to move on. With the introduction of the horn in Old School, will we be seeing the story shift to focusing on this artifact more and less on the Stone of, is it Jas?
Yeah. Jas.
Yeah, okay, cool. There we go. Or will both be key in the upcoming events? Are there any plans to continue introducing more of the Elder artifacts into the mix?
Yeah, so I don't want to spoil too much of what's to come, but sort of give us sort of like some ideas of sort of the direction we want to take it, and obviously bear in mind that like this is potential stuff to happen in the future, and everything could completely change. Like no plan is ever set in stone. Oh, get it? Stone of Jas, eh? That's terrible, wasn't it? No plan is ever set in stone, and obviously I'm going to be also a bit intentionally vague as well, so as not spoil any potential plans. But when looking at the Mahjarrat storyline, and as I was sort of just saying, like a lot of things started to fall into place once we knew the Elder Horn would play a big part. And what the ultimate sort of goal is to really sort of embrace what the Mahjarrat storyline is, in that it's not as linear as a lot of our other storylines. Like, there's lots of all these individual Mahjarrat, all their own sort of like ambitions and goals, and they're all sort of like their plots like weave in and out of each other, and then finally like culminate at the end in this sort of like the big ritual, which is what happened in RuneScape. And we've not really been like hiding that. That's very much sort of like a similar direction we're moving, and we are moving towards a ritual, but it's going to be a very, very different ritual to one seen in RuneScape. And the way we sort of imagine it is that there's going to be, I guess, two very key like plot elements that are going to sort of like come together of a ritual. And we've now like fully finished setting one up with Desert Treasure 2, and that is Sliske and the Horn. And like so that's all set up, ready to go. That side of the storyline is ready to move into the finale. So now what you'll sort of see for the next few Mahjarrat quests is a sort of like switching gear a bit, changing pace, and going to sort of like take the other half of the storyline and sort of bring that up to the same point. And with the Elder Horn sort of being this sort of very like new and drastic change that is like not like anything that was seen in sort of like the original Mahjarrat quests or anything that RuneScape's ever done. Sort of, I guess, going back to what I was saying about we want to make sure we're still respectful of like the original creator's intentions, that sort of thing. The original creator in this case being Paul Gower himself. For the other half of the storyline, it is still going to focus on Lucian and the Stone of Jas. And then sort of like the big culmination is sort of like what happens when these two very opposite individuals, both possessing a very powerful artifact, come together of a ritual. So that's sort of the rough plan for what we'd like to do, and say any more of what will actually happen and if it'll come to pass exactly as people expect would be a spoiler. But yes, so the plan is that the Stone of Jas will still play a role, and that Lucian will still play a role, and that's going to be the sort of focus of the next few quests we do. And I don't actually have a chat open, but I think I open it up. I'm sure I saw someone when I had it last open asking about backporting and stuff, and yeah, that's sort of like what we're thinking here. That we know how much people love While Gothic Sleeps. Like it was created by quite a few of the original creators, including Paul Gower himself was one of the people that worked on it. So we're sort of like quite open to as we do that half the storyline to actually do a backport of While Gothic Sleeps. Obviously with some changes. We still want to mix it up a little bit, but that potentially now the next thing you'll see from Mahjarrat storyline, it could potentially be going in that direction. Though not, I should make very clear, not 100% confirmed yet. We know we want to do Lucian of the Stone. How much of it is just While Gothic Sleeps again, how much we change, still up for debate. Is again finding that balance between being respectful of the original creator and their intentions, and also making sure we continue to tell our own stories, just like what we've done with the Elder Horn.
Amazing. We actually have a question kind of related to how the stories differentiate, but we'll get onto that just after this last one in regards to the Horn, and it kind of touches on a similar vein, where someone has asked that in RuneScape it's stated that the Elder Horn was in possession of a sea singer called Quin, who used it to command massive armies of sea creatures within the 5th Age. How do we reconcile the two versions, where in RuneScape the real one ended up in the Eastern Lands, whereas in Old School it was in the Vault? Is the one that RuneScape references the fake version that was transported by Perseria? Okay, there we go.
So we don't have to reconcile the two versions. I think it's really important to make clear here. for the avoidance of any doubt, this is sort of like I sort of answer a question about on this sort of topic pretty much every time we do one of these. So it's clearly that time to answer it again. That these are two separate games, two separate stories. Like I know some even after I've answered it all these times, some people sort of debate that. Like so, make it very abundantly clear that we are not beholden to what RuneScape does whatsoever, nor are they beholden to what we do. Like we are completely separate games. So nothing states that the Elder Horn in RuneScape needs to be in the same place as it is in Old School. Like that's not like there's no reason why we have to do that. That said, I did want to sort of like still reference that RuneScape a bit and sort of have a bit of fun with it. So yeah, that is why we have the fake horn. It's sort of having that little plot point sort of like serve two purposes. It keeps you guessing about the sort of like reveal at the end, but also it was sort of a fun little reference to RuneScape, implying that in Old School at least, that there might still be a horn in the Eastern Lands, just like there is in RuneScape. But whereas in RuneScape that is presumably the real one, in Old School that one is actually a fake version of it. So that was sort of like a fun little like reference to RuneScape and sort of like the direction they took the horn in. So, but yeah, like. We've very much gone in our own direction here of doing something a bit different. And I guess for anyone who is interested in the lore of both games, this is in no way like anyone saying that that now means that the Elder Horn in RuneScape versus the Eastern Lands was actually a fake as well. Again, like two separate stories. Maybe RuneScape might choose to do that in the end. Maybe they won't. Like, but they're completely separate.
Okay. Well, I think the clarification there is really important. So thanks for making that, Ed. When we talk about the stories being different between Old School and RuneScape, this question asks specifically what happened in the past that set things up to play out so differently between the two games.
So I think it's kind of half answered that and sort of like answering the last one, but sort of like I think the key difference here is just that, like what happened with the horn, like and that we wanted to sort of reference what happened in RuneScape a bit by sort of mentioning that there was a horn sent east, but whereas in RuneScape that is presumably the real horn, in Old School that was a fake and the real one was put in the vault, and it's sort of like that event is sort of like the thing that has now sort of set up what we're doing next in the story. And I guess sort of talk a bit more about history. I know I think I may have maybe answered a question like this maybe a bit badly in the past and maybe caused some confusion. So I'll use this as a good opportunity, to sort of like hopefully maybe set things straight a little bit. I know I've said in the past that RuneScape and Old School mostly share the same history but have different futures, and I think that may have not been a particularly good answer to those questions, because I think that's led some people sort of believe that there's this this sort of like there's this event where the timelines split. I've seen people refer to that of like, where do the timelines split, as if they were once one timeline and then became two, and we don't actually like really consider it that way. I know like there is always going to be a certain feeling of that, because that's quite literally how what happened with the games. There was one game that literally split into two, so there's always going to be sort of kind of feeling that maybe the narrative does the same, but we don't actually really necessarily treat it that way. We treat Old School and RuneScape as totally separate narratives. And when I've said in the past that the two games have a mostly shared history, that's not stating that that's an absolute like rule that they have that has to stay that way, but more just so in that that was kind of inevitable when you've got two games that were one for so long and all the history, so much history was established. It's kind of inevitable then that the biggest change you'd see would be in the future rather than the past. But in situations like this, where we have bits of history that haven't been fully explained in either game, there's no reason why we have to necessarily keep them the same across both games. So yeah, that's why we've sort of done things a bit differently here and introduced this idea of that horn being a fake and there being a real one hidden somewhere else.
All right, brilliant. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. I think this question has got two parts, and you've probably answered the second part, but maybe there's a different type of answer depending on the first. But what was the reasoning behind placing Sliske as the de facto antagonist? And do you plan to deviate greatly from the general RuneScape narrative in future quests?
So I think I sort of mentioned this earlier, like we actually knew that Sliske was going to be the antagonist before we even like knew that it was going to be the Elder Horn he was after. It was pretty much one of the first things that was decided, and I think the decision was very much came about of that again, we knew we wanted to do something different. We knew we wanted to take the storyline in a different direction while still being, as I sort of keep saying, while still being respectful of like what had already happened. And it's like, it's not very easy to do something like that. Like that's a very like contradictory statement. Like, to respect the original creator's vision, you follow it. You know, you like, you don't make a really famous TV show about a beloved book series and then change it for the last 2 seasons. People don't like it when you do that.
The spice.
So it's like, it's how do we be respectful but also take things a different direction? So, and Sliske was sort of like, he very much stuck out as a character who, when you looked like back to like 2008, 2009, that sort of era, like he was a Mahjarrat that people were talking about constantly. He was a character that everyone loved talking about, loved speculating about. He played such a core part of all these speculations, but he didn't actually really appear much in game. And even in the ritual, he played mostly a background role. His story didn't really start picking up and him becoming a more notable character until a few years after that, with the World Wakes and the death of Guthix. And that was sort of where it sort of like the golden opportunity sort of appeared. We know we're not going to kill Guthix, and I know I've answered that on every stream before, so a good opportunity here to say it again. He ain't dying in old school. That isn't happening. And that meant that was one. That was a character where we could safely take him in a different direction and still be respectful of how he was originally written. So that was sort of like where he came about. And he's just such a great character for it as well, because of sort of the stuff I was on about earlier, where he plays such a different role. Like, if we've got, as I'm saying earlier, we've got Lucian on one side, who is very much just this sort of like, he's, you know, he's great, I love him, but he is very much sort of like a more crude, rough around the edges villain, who is sort of like, his goal is very simple. Like, he just wants power, he wants to become a god. He's very simple. So having Sliske as sort of like a more complicated individual, like, really balances that out, you know, very nicely. And like, having these two sort of both playing a key role, it just fits so well. And then I guess for the second half of the question, I've kind of already answered that, in that yes, we do plan to deviate. Specifically, our deviations will focus a lot around the Sixth Age and the killing of Guthix. That isn't going to happen in old school. Like, so a lot of the differences you see in this storyline will sort of be sort of like heavily based around what would happen instead in a world where the gods can, you know, stay gone, don't return, and what do these Mahjarrat do instead? So those parts are going to expect those to deviate quite heavily. Don't expect Guthix to die. Expect Sliske's storyline to go in a very different direction. Like, I know I obviously, I completely understandably, a few people sort of like going, oh, Sliske's now been properly introduced into old school. This is it. This is the first step towards the world wakes and Guthix's death. And to be very clear, no, that's not the intention. We're taking you in a completely different direction. And then again, other parts of the storyline will sort of like follow similar narrative beats, like the Lucian stuff, because there's sort of like people are nostalgic about that. It's what the original creator wanted. There's no reason to deviate from that.
Brilliant, thank you, Ed. Along you giving that explanation, you set off someone's Alexa, so maybe we can add some more keywords in to kind of keep that happening. Very interesting, though. In regards to like Sliske, we actually have a question here in terms of the role that he played during this quest. And I guess really, is the implication supposed to be that Sliske had always been these characters, or was it rather that he replaced them at some point during the storylines?
I think this is one of the most fun things about this quest, and I might disappoint a few people here because I'm not going to give a true answer, because to be honest, there isn't one. The whole point of it is that you don't know. You don't know when he replaced them. And I've already seen so many like fun like speculations, sort of like when it might have happened, and that was sort of like very much part of it. So like, it's open to interpretation, and there's lots of stuff in the game. Like, we put lots of things in, like some more obvious than others, that sort of like can lead you in sort of like multiple directions, and like it's all intentionally quite vague and unclear. One thing I really like the idea was that maybe Sliske himself is planting like false seeds as to when he might have done it to keep the player guessing. So yeah, it's very open to interpretation. We didn't actually intentionally, when writing it, we never specify an answer on when he took over from these people. And we're probably going to keep it out. It's probably going to remain unanswered, because it's one of those things where it's just more fun to sort of like wonder exactly when it happened. I know people really wanted the answer, so I guess that's a bit disappointing. So I'll give you my personal take on it, but this is not canon. please don't anyone go putting this on the wiki afterwards. It's just my own personal take, and the whole point is that everyone's personal take should be different because that's what makes it fun. But my personal take is that it varies from character to character, and that some characters have always been Sliske, so you've literally, any interaction you've had with them have always been him, and I think that is probably true for, definitely for Kettler, and almost certainly true for Perston as well. But for the other three, I like to imagine that for them, at least some of the players' interactions with them were while they were still themselves, and then Sliske took over later, and that depending on which character, like might have happened earlier or later, like the assassin probably still happened fairly early on. The fun thing about the assassin is that he was probably working for Sliske, then died, and then Sliske probably took over where he left off. One of the things Sliske says is that he didn't actually, I mean, he could be lying, and again, this isn't actually something that we've set in stone, and is again another thing that I like to leave open to interpretation, but Sliske at least claims that he didn't actually, it wasn't him that killed any of them, that they all died on their own, and then he just took over when they did die, and sort of looking at their own stories, that's very believable. Let's be honest, Cassandre probably wouldn't have survived in the Stranglewood on his own for very long. It's quite believable that he might have died in the Stranglewood when Sliske took over. Another fun thing that I saw people speculating on is how many of them had interactions with Sliske before their death. And again, it's not another one we've really answered or we will answer. As just said, my personal headcanon is that at least for the assassin, he probably was working for Sliske before he died when Sliske took over. Did Sliske have any interactions with the others? We know he likes manipulating, and with the Barrows brothers, one of the bits of their story is that they, while not fully realizing where it would lead to, they did actually sort of like willingly enter into an agreement with Sliske, which is what led to them becoming the Barrows brothers. Did the same happen for these four characters? Did Sliske meet them, promise them something? I mean, they all four clearly had something they wanted. Like, again, we'll probably never actually know the true answer, but there is something fun to think about there. Sort of like Cassandre feared death. He said he tried everything. Did Sliske present him an offer of, I'll give you eternal life in return for something or other? And in true Sliske fashion, that eternal life is now an eternal life of servitude as a wife for him. Stuff like that's really fun to think about. And again, like, it's not set in stone and it's open to interpretation, which is one of the really fun things about it. So yeah, no definitive answer, but that's just some of my personal takes on it, how I like to imagine it. But you might like to imagine something different, and who knows, maybe one of them's true. Like, only Sliske knows, and he's not going to tell us.
Maybe one day we'll find out the truth. But I think it's really cool that you can have so much open to interpretation, and yet it still makes sense from start to finish, especially as more things unravel. And I was actually going to ask you a question that I was really curious about whilst you were kind of like answering that is, what does it mean when Sliske has replaced someone? Is like Sliske a murderer? Would he have like killed these NPCs and then taken over their bodies? But you kind of suggested that maybe they already died. Or is it okay? I'm just imagining that like Sliske's got some palace somewhere, and in there is a dungeon with all of the other characters that he's replaced that are just trapped and keeping them hostage. How does he treat them?
Again, it's exactly, stuff like that. It's like sort of really fun to sort of like speculate on. Of did they willingly allow this to happen? Was he directly involved? Did he just take over afterwards? Was there some like weird pact between him and them? I really like stuff like that. And I think it really suits his character as well to have that sort of whole thing going on in that air of mystery. One thing that I guess, regardless, one thing that is really notable is sort of one of his lines at the end where he says that he became them, like that in his head he becomes them. He's not not Sliske in disguise as someone else. In his mind, he feels that he is now Perston. While he's in his Perston disguise, he feels that he is Perston. So his take on it is very very interesting one. I guess potentially quite a warped one, that he feels he is now this person.
It's just rolling around with multiple personalities locked up inside that come out depending on the mood. It is really interesting, and honestly made for an incredible story. So I thoroughly enjoyed going through it. But aside from Sliske, let's talk about maybe the Duke. Okay, Ed, how do we pronounce the surname? Sucellus? Sucellus. All right, there we go. I'll remember that from now on. So what drove Duke Sucellus insane to the point of starting to eat people? Is he insane, or was people eating planned and intentional? If so, for what purpose?
Yeah, it's very rude of him, wasn't it, to start nomming everyone up.
Little bit.
So I think the thing about the Duke is that so when looking at this quest, like obviously it focuses on the fall of the Zoroastrian Empire, like hence the name. So the vast majority of like the location stuff you visit, and the vast majority of like the lore you're uncovering is stuff from pretty early in the God Wars, like around like just shortly after Zaros's defeat. The fun thing about the Duke and Gorok is that they show something a little bit different in that like Gorok was the last safe haven of the Zoroastrian Empire, and it lasted all through the God Wars, pretty much in secret, like this prison hidden away that nobody even really cared about, like buried in ice, and as a result, it's sort of like this safe haven for Zoroastrian refugees. But what that does also mean is that the Duke was stuck in this prison for thousands of years, and I imagine that's enough to make anyone start to question everything. And as for why he started eating those people, there's a few notes you can find around the prison that sort of allude to it, but basically he believed that after the God Wars ended that he was destined to now be the one to restore the Empire. And the way demons like the Duke work is they only grow, like, and the more they eat, the more they grow, and like in their society, like the bigger you are, it's sort of like a sign of your like standing in society. So he believed that for him to have the power to restore the empire, he had to grow as big as possible to become as powerful as possible, because he grows in power, and that was very much like in his mind, at least, it was like, all these Zoroastrian citizens who have survived in this prison with me, they now have to make their noble sacrifice to restore the empire, because I'm the only one who's powerful enough to do it. They can't do it, but they can be involved in some way by being sacrifices to allow the Duke to grow in power to do so. And obviously it didn't work out, because somebody went, no, you should stop eating people, and sealed him away in there, but that was at least what he was thinking. Yeah, probably a bit of a flawed take on the situation from the Duke, but he was trying his best.
Good intentions, maybe questionable delivery. Good way to summarize that. Okay, I absolutely love this question, and I'm curious myself too, but I don't want to see it changed, even though I know that from player feedback, maybe others do. I personally love it. But anyway, here we go. What's the lore reason that we have to wake Duke Sucellus up with salty mushroom potions? If stabbing him while he's asleep doesn't wake him, why can't we just kill him in his sleep? Our characters aren't exactly known for their honor, so I doubt they would have a problem with it.
So there is a lore reason. There is a lore reason. I promise it's not
okay.
just.
I thought you were about to say,
no,
no, we just decided it was a mechanic, so we went with it.
Like, there's always a certain element of like, in a game, gameplay should always come first. As much as a narrative guy, as much as it pains me to say, like, the gameplay should always come front and center, and we should always be prepared to like write the story around the gameplay rather than the other way around. Because like, ultimately, you do it well, that makes the game more fun. I'm sure some people might disagree with that, because I know some people love the Duke prep phase. I know some people hate it. But for this one, like, there was actually some, like, I guess as a result of that, some narrative in games can sometimes start to feel a little bit contrived if they're driven by gameplay. But for this one, it's not actually too unreasonable, this one, to be honest. That basically, as we were just sort of talking about in the last question, the Duke was sealed away in the prison after he started eating everyone. And the stuff that's left behind in there is the stuff they used to basically sort of like pacify him, so they could seal him in there. So basically what the player is doing, the player is sort of like repeating the process that was used to trap him in the first place. And the potions aren't, well, you are waking up with them, but that's not the primary goal. The goal with the potions is to actually weaken him, to poison him. And the idea is that if you were to just go up and poke him, he would wake up, and he'd wake up at full power, and he is so powerful, having eaten all those people, that he would just, if he did his special eye attack, if he looked at you, you would just immediately disintegrate, like, because he's that powerful. So what you're doing with the potions is you're weakening him, so that when he does wake up, that he is weak enough for you to actually be able to have a fight with him. But unsurprisingly, he's not too keen on being poisoned, so when you start eating potions of poison into his mouth when he's fast asleep, he wakes up.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I guess there's always a way to make something make sense. But Reasonable. I like it. Thank you, Ed. Okay, what about a different boss, and in this case, the Whisperer? How long has the Whisperer been under Camdozaal, and how did it affect the dwarves during their time there?
So this is sort of one where there's a few like little lore tidbits you can find throughout Lasar that sort of like give a bit more background on sort of like what was going on there. But the short of it is that Lasar was sort of like split into two halves, I guess, the city and the fortress over the top. And the fortress was destroyed, but the city survived. The city sort of became a refuge for people from the fortress. So they sort of like retreated down there, and the city was also, it's mentioned in the quest, city was also home to sort of like the great Zerosian scientists and that sort of thing. And I think we might actually get to a question a bit later on this, so I won't answer too much now. But the short of it is that you've got the totem, and it was sent to Lasar to be studied, and the Whisperer was sent to Lasar to oversee those studies and like make sure everything proceeded as desired. And when the fortress was destroyed by the dwarves, the city was sealed, so they could sort of like hide down there basically and continue their studies without the dwarves knowing. So she's been underneath Camdozaal since the fall of the Empire. So even before Camdozaal was built, she was down there, and she's reigned there ever since. Now it's not really had too much of an effect on the dwarves there, because Lasar was sealed. And the Camdozaal was sort of built like kind of much higher up. The whole shadowy stuff going on there in her presence and the presence of a totem didn't really have too much an impact on the dwarves. But that said, one of the teasers we put in for Desert Treasure 2 long ago is if you walk up to the edge of that pit in Camdozaal, where you get down to Lasar, you have this voice calling out to you, encouraging you to come down into the pit. So there's clearly still some slight influence managing to escape, and I definitely reckon probably one or two dwarves may have accidentally wandered down there following this siren's call, as it very much is, and never to return again.
Interesting, very interesting. Okay, what about? Okay, is the night? I'm just going to go straight into it. Is the nightmare related in any sort of way to the Whisperer? Their designs are vaguely similar, after all.
So somewhat, yes. Not like to a huge amount, but they both like share an origin in that the Whisperer like is kind of like definitely was a siren, still kind of is a siren, but one that's now sort of been heavily warped by shadowy fun. And she came from Eastern Lands, just like the Nightmare did. So they're sort of like having the same origin. Like the Nightmare originated on Ashiyama. Actually, in my personal headcanon was the Whisperer did also originate from Ashiyama, but we never say that in game. Like, the bare minimum, she's from somewhere in the Eastern Lands, relatively close by. So they both come from the same part of the world. So there is some links there. Not too many links. Like, there's not some like secret conspiracy where the Whisperer and the Nightmare are like one and the same. But yeah, there's definitely some shared origins there.
Interesting. Thank you, Ed. All right. The Shadow Realm. Was it by any chance, or even partly inspired by the Shamanism skill that we pitched in the past? Obviously, the Shamanism skill had the potential of the Spirit Realm. Which came first?
So, trying to remember now, because like can't really take any credit for either of them. They're both concepts that existed in the game long before. It was a Shadow Realm that came first, because the Shadow Realm is something that is mentioned like even as early as Desert Treasure 1, because obviously like you get the Ring of Visibility and stuff like that. So there wasn't any sort of like direct ties there. It was just sort of like, it was actually a bit of a coincidence that the team sort of like working on the skill came with the Shamanism idea, and then we were also working on DT2 and the Lasar Shadow Realm stuff. Now that said, I do find it a bit weird that there's these two realms that act very, very similar to each other. So I do wonder if we do decide to explore one or both of them further in like the future, which I mean we'll definitely explore the Shadow Realm further. But if we do decide to properly go further into the Spirit Realm, I do wonder if they might actually be one and the same, or at least interlinked in some way, because they do behave very similarly. But no, the links to Shamanism, like complete coincidence. Just so happened we were both working on similar things at the same time. Cool.
All right. Thank you, Ed. I may butcher the name of this one. I'm really sorry. I think I know what it is, but just in case, please correct me. The pillar is a pretty direct reference to Xau-Tak. Is that right? Oh my god, I got it. Let's go. Who was originally intended to be a part of the pirate quest line. Is the plan to cross these quest lines or change course for the pirate line, or was this just a fun, hey, look, lore moment?
More so the second. Like, there's no plan to like combine the quest lines. Like, you sort of see we sort of like do this quite a bit, and it's something from when we've done like surveys, like player feedback and that sort of thing. Something people like really quite enjoy is that our quest lines are very much separate. We like old school doesn't have really have one main storyline. It's just got lots of different storylines that all have or also like roughly of equal importance, and they don't fully ever like really cross over each other. They never like really properly combine. But there's lots. Sometimes you get some like fun like shared themes across them, like how like how we did like the desert stuff last year, like Beneath Cursed Sands and Tombs of Massacre. You know, the Mahjarrat do get mentioned in that stuff a couple of times because there's like some shared history there between the Mahjarrat and the desert gods. But what was that shared history? The storylines are still separate. It's sort of very much the same here in that there's some shared history there between what happens in the pirate storyline and some of the stuff that happens in Lasar and to the Zerosians, but it doesn't. It's like still quite separate, so the storylines aren't going to combine. So yeah, I guess more so a fun hey look lore moment, but it's still, I guess still some links there, still some interweaving.
Interesting. Okay, maybe there's some potential there for the future. Who knows? What about the Leviathan? So it says here the Leviathan is the Leviathan a creature of the abyss, or a big sea monster that got dragged into the scar due to the teleporting shenanigans and has just adapted over time?
Yeah, it's a poor victim of shenanigans. Yeah, when the rift to the scar was opened, which you sort of learn about in the Temple of the Eye quest, the Temple of the Eye is built underwater, so some unfortunate sea creatures, including the Leviathan, got sucked in as well. Now that said, the Leviathan has now been in the scar for thousands of years, so I'd say it is far more now a creature of the abyss than a sea monster. It has been warped by its time in the abyss so much. It is very much more of the abyss. You actually see in the quest there's some demons that have entered the scar and are trying to like take power from it, and some of them have already started to become warped even just from a very short amount of time in there. So you can sort of imagine what 1,000 years will do to something in there. So yeah, originally it was a sea creature, but now it has very much sort of like the abyss has become its home.
Wow, poor Leviathan. Maybe we can say that cleanse it of the corruption, or not. The boss scares the heck out of me. I'll go there eventually. All right, this next question is going to be really difficult for me. It's almost like I'm going to read another language, so I will try my best. How come the Praefectus Classis attempt to summon reinforcements through teleportation failed during the battle for the Eye? Was she perhaps teleblocked by the Justiciar of the Lion, assisted by the Stone of Jas?
It was the Stone of Jas. So this is sort of like, I guess, kind of following on from a previous point, in that like the rift that was opened when the Leviathan got sucked in, it was caused by this attempt to summon reinforcements during the battle for the Eye, and the teleport failed, and it's what opened the rift. And yeah, the reason it failed was the presence of the Stone of Jas, sort of like warping what the spell did, that sort of thing.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm glad at least I didn't butcher it, and great answer. When we travel to the abyss, it becomes clear pretty quickly that we're traveling through a brain. Is it the brain of something very large, or did the magic of the abyss / the scar make us very small?
Yeah, it's big. It's big. You're in a big brain. Yeah, like every time we've gone to the abyss, we basically sort of like introduce a different body part because yeah, there's it's sort of like covered in the quest a little bit. There's a few like little notes that sort of like talk about it a bit more. But yeah, the abyss itself is just that. It's an abyss. It's just this big empty space. Whenever you travel to the abyss, you're actually traveling to the inside of the body of this giant demon. And the original area of the abyss you go to, where you've got the rune crafting, like the pause for rune crafting altars. Like we imagine that sort of like maybe being sort of like maybe like around the heart or the stomach maybe, and then you've got the the area where you fight the sire. Those are like very clearly the lungs, and then this is now the brain. So who knows? Maybe when we go to the abyss again, maybe we'll visit a different body part.
Ooh, okay. Now you've got me curious on like, will we ever know what the creature is that it is that we're exploring?
It's something. It's something I'd like to explore more. It's something that I know RuneScape has explored a bit more than we have. Like this creature.
Chat's just sent me.
I turned chat off. Are they talking about body parts we could visit? Ah, I see. Yes.
Yes. Other bits of the anatomy that we could go and explore.
Yeah, I did have a feeling that might come up.
Dear.
We'll not get into the anatomy of giant demonic creatures trapped in the abyss and whether or not they have certain body parts and whether or not you'll be able to visit them. Moving on.
Sorry. Yeah, so I don't know. I got distracted. Did you answer the question fully? Will we ever visit what we're exploring?
I definitely would like to.
Okay.
Yeah, like there's no immediate plans, and I guess like for anyone interested, I know RuneScape has sort of delved into that a bit more of like the like exactly how the demonic creature ended up being trapped there and that sort of thing. And yeah, something I'd like us to have some more fun with soon. Like we definitely took it a lot further this time around. Like we had a lot more detail and like some of the narrative stuff, especially some like the little notes you can find on like exactly what it is. So yeah, I'd definitely like to when the opportunity arises, keep exploring that sort of thing.
Very interesting. Okay, all right. Well, as long as we don't explore parts that chat were mentioning, then I'll be okay with that. And moving on, as you said, are the old ones from the Garden of Death going to be explored more in a future quest? We found out what happened to them, but not really who they were.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're quite keen to keep exploring the old ones. I mean, I guess to be clear, like I wouldn't expect them to really play too much more of a role in the Mahjarrat storyline. Like the reason like you visit there in Desert Treasure 2 is because Vardorvis travelled there. They're not really like too closely linked to the Mahjarrat. It's just sort of more like they both at one point were both in the same place. But there's definitely some other stuff we'd like to do with them and sort of like dig more into their history. But to say any more would be a spoiler. So I guess yeah, for now, just yes, we'll do more with them.
Okay, all right. We've got some love for you here. I'd done this question. Have you ever considered writing a movie script for Hollywood? Man's a genius. That's what it says, word for word.
Do we know who wrote that question?
I don't know. Maybe it's someone.
It wasn't me. Just to be clear, it wasn't me. I don't really know how to answer that. I guess no. I don't think you can just write a script for Hollywood. I don't think they'll take anyone. But even if they did, at least at the moment, I'm far more interested in games than films. I prefer like the way we tell stories in games compared to a lot of other mediums, to be honest. So it like writing for other types like books, films isn't something that really particularly does it ever like appeal to me. But who knows? Maybe it will at some point.
What if someone from Hollywood reached out and wanted to make a movie based on RuneScape? Would that then twist your arm a little bit?
Okay, if we're making a film based on RuneScape, then yeah, let's do it.
Okay, all right. If anyone knows anyone from Hollywood, just ask us at Twitter. The handles are just below. We'll make it happen. Cool. If not, maybe an anime. I'll settle for a RuneScape anime. That would be really cool. Right. Have players asked about every bit of data in the table the Golem knows, or are there queries that haven't been asked yet?
I think they've got everything. We haven't actually really been tracking it. We don't actually have data tracking in for it. So I couldn't say 100%, but I had a look at the wiki page, and they had sort of like a list of all the ones. I'm pretty sure they've got them all. So yeah, I think people got everything. People are just too good when it comes to Easter eggs these days. We can never keep anything hidden for long. People find everything so quickly. But it was really nice. It was really nice seeing how people had so much fun with the Golem. It's great. It's like pretty much like the first thing you do in the quest. And like it was fantastic on day one. We got all these people sort of like plowing through the areas, getting stuck into the bosses, and it was just so some people just sort of like, oh yeah, I've not even really started the quest yet because I got to the golem, got so distracted. I've been sat at the golem for the last 3 hours just typing things in. It was really fun watching how much fun people were having with it. We called it internally. We refer to it as the Goo Golem, old school's first search engine.
The Goo Golem. God damn. I really enjoyed seeing the wiki team actually trying to delve into as much information as they can, and I forget the name of the NPC now. Someone maybe at the... I can't remember who he is, but they're like convinced that they're part of the Mahjarrat, and the search term is apparently blocked at the golem. It's like inaccessible.
Yes. So we
Was it
did also...
Romilly Weaklax?
Romilly Weaklax.
Thanks, chat.
We did throw in a couple of Easter eggs as well into the golem. So there's obviously a couple of searches you do with the golem that you shouldn't maybe take too seriously. The Romilly Weaklax conspiracy maybe isn't quite confirmed just yet, but we couldn't resist having that bit of fun there.
Fair enough. All right. Well, it definitely made for some fun. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my god, they've discovered something, but I didn't want to ask because I'd probably seem like an idiot. Okay, so the Desert Treasure 2 Golem revealed many yet unseen RuneScape... hold on, have I just read this right? I did. It revealed many yet unseen RuneScape Mahjarrat to exist in old school RuneScape, and this says Palkeera, Ralvash, etc. Can we count on those Mahjarrat to show up at the coming Mahjarrat ritual?
So I guess important to note that this golem it's from like the Zerosian Empire, and like the golem is sort of like the information of the golem is accurate when the Empire fell. Obviously, no one was keeping up to date after they all died. So just because the golem says a Mahjarrat exists and is alive back then doesn't mean they are now. So some of those Mahjarrat, yes, we're planning to do more with them. So as I think we mentioned earlier, one side of the Mahjarrat storyline is now sort of like all set up, ready to go for finale. We're now going to sort of like shift over to start building up the other side, and that will involve us focusing on some Mahjarrat we've not really done much with yet. Big one obviously being Lucian, like continuing his storyline. What's he doing with the Staff Armadillo? Will he get the Stone of Jas again? All that fun stuff. But also a few of us who haven't been seen in old school yet. I think people can probably guess who they are. Should I? I won't spoil it. People probably has a pretty good guess. It's not going to be. Don't expect anything too unexpected. The ones you're hoping to see, you'll probably see, but we're probably not going to introduce too many other different Mahjarrat that haven't really been mentioned before. We've already got a fair few dusted around. We don't want to have too many, or it'll get a bit much. One of the really fun things about the Mahjarrat storyline is that there's so few of them that each member of this race is sort of like a huge character in their own right, that we can really sort of like do lots of fun character-driven stuff with each one of them. And if we start introducing too many, we'll lose that. So yeah, don't expect too many. Don't expect all the ones that you know about to be popping up. Some are very much dead or like out of the story. But yeah, there'll definitely be a few more show up that we haven't seen yet.
Interesting, and that kind of like answers the next question that was going to come up anyway, which if I'd have read, I would have known it was also Romilly Weaklax that I was looking for. But they kind of just said, outside of the wiki entries, are there any more Mahjarrat currently out there? And I think you just kind of that are masquerading as regular NPCs. Maybe some that haven't been seen in RuneScape. I think kind of just said, yeah, probably to that, right?
Yeah. So yeah, there's a few more Mahjarrat out there. There is definitely one masquerading as a regular NPC, and I think people probably already know who it is, but I won't say it outright, just in case you don't and you want to keep the speculation up. It's obviously Romilly Weaklax, clearly. As for Mahjarrat never seen in RuneScape, again, probably not. We don't want to start introducing too many, based on sort of like the answer I just gave to the previous question. It's sort of like it'll take away the fun that we can have for Mahjarrat of like having only a small number of them.
Okay, thank you. All right, I am so lost on this question, so I'm hoping that you know, Ed. Why did you change Nabanik's name?
We didn't. we didn't actually change his name. If you read through the quest dialogue, you'll see that there's actually a little bit of confusion with one of the NPCs, and then he just rolls with it. Basically, when you first go to the dig site and you talk to what's his name, Terry, and Terry's like, "Oh, you need to go to speak to," and he gets his name wrong. He's like, "Is it Nabanik or Bannikin?" Oh no, yeah, Bannikin. So he gets his name wrong, and then when you go and talk to Nabanik, who's really Azanadra, he just rolls with it. He just like goes, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Because he's a Mahjarrat in disguise. It's not his real name anyway. So he's just sort of like, "Sure, why not? I'll be Bannikin now." So we didn't actually really change his name. We just had him just roll with it when another NPC gets it wrong.
Okay. Well, I would have definitely messed up because the pronunciation. And now I know, Nabanik, not Nabanik. Thanks, Ed. Can you read out the next question because I really don't want to pronounce the last word in the brackets. I've been toying over it for the last minute and it's not happening.
It's all right. I'll help you. I'll put you out your misery. So, assuming I'm on the right question at least, what is the purpose of the Uzer Oasis since none of the characters were added in DT2, although Elias White is obviously Wahisatel?
I would not
so, we've kind of half already answered this as part of the other questions, but basically that there's just more to come. DT2 was just setting up one half of the storyline. We now want to go sort of start setting up the other half, and that's going to involve more Mahjarrat, more locations. So there was never a plan for the Oasis to be part of DT2. That was always a plan. That was always included, sort of set up some other stuff.
All right, brilliant. Thank you. I'm so glad because I would have fumbled so poorly. Just to double check for Mod Spear, we're going to move over to number 25 in our list here. I think it's a really important question and probably gives a lot of information that we've not maybe shared as much. How do new JMods learn the pre-existing lore of the game and how to use it to implement it in new quests? Do they use the wiki or is there some kind of JMod RuneScape lore book?
To be honest, probably at the moment with great difficulty. It is a big game with a lot of lore, and we are starting to fix that. I think on past live streams, people might remember us talking about the lore Bible, as we call it, and we're starting to try and get a few more things documented internally for people to utilize. So it's definitely something of note is the fact that pretty much the vast majority of old school's quests were made by me, and I don't know, maybe some people appreciate that, but if somebody doesn't like the kind of quests that I write, they're probably getting pretty damn bloody sick of them now because I keep writing them. So we're definitely quite keen to get more people on the team sort of involved in the narrative stuff, because right now it isn't really too many people, and there's a lot of people on the team who really want to do it as well. So many people on the team are like, "Oh, I really want to do more of quests and narrative because they're so fun, but I just don't really know where to begin because there's just so much lore, and then there's all there's so many things to consider. So there's all of RuneScape's lore and which bits of that are canon to old school and which aren't. We've sort of talked about that a fair bit earlier, sort of we want to keep some things canon, but other things we are well and truly, completely and utterly taking our own direction. We're not even close. There's so many things to consider. We're doing our best to start trying to get some of that documented now, so that hopefully more people can do some more fun things with quests if they want to.
Cool. So basically, what you're saying is the RuneScape lore book is Mod Ed's head, by and large, but also not. I realized as well, we have an internal lore team. I actually recently joined the lore channel that we have with our internal chat tools so that I could start understanding a little bit more of it, because Desert Treasure 2 really just piqued my interest on it, and I was very reminiscent of the fact that I don't have a huge amount of lore experience, and I really enjoy actually learning more and more about it. So yeah, very cool. Thank you, Ed. We actually probably have time for one last question, so I wonder if we go for the next one in the list here, and then we can go back over announcements. And we've got some cool imagery that our wonderful community have been making that I really want to show you all. This one here is saying the quest is filled with weird interactions such as the odd fishing spot and 2 cave entrances at Stranglewood, a teleporting chest at Lasar, and feedable name-changing leeches in the Scar. I said interactions just for fun, or might there actually be a use for some or all of them in-game? Let the Easter egg hunting community know if so.
there's an opportunity here. Like, well, I could send things in a
yeah,
very
what do you
different
wanna
direction,
do?
but no, I'll be nice. They're just fun little Easter eggs. Don't read too much into them. They're just little bits of fun. You know, we love throwing Easter eggs in, especially with like these doing like 4 new areas. Like, there's some great opportunities to chuck a few Easter eggs in. A few of the Easter eggs are like little references to some of the like games and stuff that inspired us while making DT2, and some of them are just complete like random nonsense just for a bit of fun. So yeah, don't read too much into them. Just have a bit of fun with them.
Awesome. I love the little Easter eggs that you see out, the ones that I can find anyway. I'm not an Easter egg hunter, but I let others appreciate that. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ed. That was really, really insightful, and I hope chat felt the same way. Before we wrap up, let's quickly look at some of the content that our players have put together. So we can bring up the first image, if possible, please. Essentially saying, are you ready for the desert? And OSRS Love has made this amazing series of artworks for Desert Treasure 2. This one was shared just before the Desert Treasure 2 release date, which looks awesome. And then the next one that we have is of the Leviathan. And another piece from this series. His words to explain the creation process of these artworks were exporting models from the game using RuneLite add-ons and a couple of other programs to read game files, putting them into 3D software of choice, in this case Blender, crafting the scene, lighting and camera work, and then some Photoshop touch-up. This one of the Leviathan is just like really ominous. I love it. And then we have one of the Whisperer as well. And apparently there's meant to be a child gnome reference at the back, which you can kind of see on one of the pillars. I don't know if that was intentional or what, but fantastic.
Oh, that's they found the hidden Mahjarrat.
It's the gnome child. Oh my god.
Well, I mean, we joke, but truth be told, Gnome Child was the first NPC in game to talk about DT2. People, I guess, sorry, I was sidetracking here a bit, and I know we're nearly at the end, but people do sometimes ask me about the Gnome Child quotes from the, was it the 2020 birthday event? And yes, can confirm that with Desert Treasure 2, another one of his teasers have now been crossed off. You can probably guess which one it is. It's the one referring to a horn buried in the sand. So yeah, that's another teaser from the birthday.
I've been telling them all along, Ed, and they didn't even realise it. Smart. Okay, next one. This one comes up from the Scald, which is another piece of fantastic artwork for the Leviathan. I always love this. I think this type of style is actually awesome. I can imagine them being like little stickers that you can put onto places, little square stickers or something. And then we have, lastly, from Garden Banana, a crochet gold trim wizard hat made by a player for a friend of theirs, which looks really cool. So many people doing crochet at the moment. I see a lot of people getting into it. Very cute. Would you wear it, Ed?
Would I wear it? With my everyday attire of the black trousers and black t-shirt, I think it'd go quite well.
The standard look, you know, add a little bit of colour into it. It's all right. I would wear it for sure. Okay, let me go back over the announcements really quickly for those of you that missed it at the very start. We only have 3, and that is !game update. This week, obviously, we did some changes to Desert Treasure 2. If you want to be able to purchase extra Rings of Shadow, if you're still doing the quest and you're running out of run during the Stranglewood and Lasar, there are now stamina boosts available. Look out for, I believe it is like a pool, as well as a... oh, Ed, help me out. What was the other thing called? It changed from a flower to a...
it's a little shrine with some,
shrine,
some
that was
yellow flowers around it.
I was going to say siren because you said siren so many times at the start of the stream. That was the only word in my head. But yeah, we also revealed all of the drop rates for the 4 bosses if you're interested in seeing those. And we also improved the drop rates slightly, you know, between 20 and 30%. In addition to that, we've obviously went over a lot of lore in regards to Desert Treasure 2 right now. But if you want to learn more about everything before Desert Treasure 2, check out !video for a lore recap from Poison Potion. Tells you a bunch about the Xauros and Mahjarrat storylines, so definitely give that a watch. It was great working with Poison Potion. And then lastly, Forestry. We just today, before this stream, released an updated blog in regards to Forestry Part 2, looking at a load of your feedback changes. Main things really is that we've removed all of the tea and leaf effects. so they're no longer going to be introduced into the poll. But familiarize yourself with everything, because the poll will be going live on Monday, where you get to vote on what should or shouldn't be added into the game. Otherwise, that is everything that I have to go over, and we only ended up missing, I think it was like 3 questions, which is insane. Sorry we didn't get a chance to get through all of the chat questions, but I hope you enjoyed it. Ed, do you have any final words before we close up the stream?
Oh, do I have any final words? I don't think so. I don't know. I'm so lost now. Like Desert Treasure 2 is out of the way. What happens now?
Oh, what does happen now?
What does it? Oh, yeah, you go. What happens now? Let's plug the summit. That's what happens
there
now.
We go.
If anyone wants to know what we're working on next, make sure you tune in.
The Summer Summit, 19th of August, 8 p.m. BST. This channel, be there. We'll reveal all that is coming up over the course of the next few months, the next kind of things that the likes of Mod Ed is going to be working on as well. So yeah, from myself, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone in chat. You've been absolutely adorable today. Thank you for being so kind. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you to Mod Spear, Mod Vex, Mod Sani, obviously Mod Ed for helping out putting together the stream. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Good luck getting any uniques that you're chasing for. Go get those green slots on your log and have a wonderful time. We will see you next week. Bye.